Thank you. Now we move on to item 9, the Tūpuna Maunga Authority Operational Plan for the 2022-23 year. I acknowledge Chair Paul Majuri is online, and I believe, though, that this item will be presented by Dominic Wilson, Head of Co-Governance, with Nicholas Turoa. So, Dominic, welcome. Kia ora tātou, and over to you. Thank you.
Kia ora. Before I start, though, I did want to obviously offer the opportunity to the Chair if he wanted to mihi or any comments he wanted to open with.
O tēnā koe te hia mana tātou mā, tēnā rā tātou I runga te ahutanga te wā. I'll keep it brief. I'm conscious of time and I'm out in the country a bit, so my bandwidth isn't that great. But just want to acknowledge all the mahi that's gone on and appreciate the time our team had with the committee and workshop last week. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you for that. So, Dominic?
Kia ora tātou. If I may speak to the report, Madam Chair. Everyone will be aware that every year the Tūpuna Maunga Authority Operational Plan is developed. It provides a framework for the Council to carry out its functions for the routine management of the Tūpuna Maunga under the direction of the Tūpuna Maunga Authority. And this plan must be prepared and agreed concurrently with the Council's annual budget, and then it's included in summary form in that budget. And of course, the operational plan needs to be agreed by both the Council and the Tūpuna Maunga Authority. Just to highlight the history to where this plan got to, of course, the Council's long-term plan budget envelope for 2021-2031 was adopted in May this year, and this included the Tūpuna Maunga Authority budgets. Just after that, in June 2021, the Authority and the Auckland Council agreed last year's plan, the 21-22 operational plan. And then in November this year, the Authority adopted as a draft this forthcoming financial plan, the 22-23 draft operational plan was adopted as a draft by the Authority. And I just want to point out, of course, that this draft operational plan fits within the Council's long-term plan funding envelope. And the only changes to this operational plan 22-23 from the previous year are to reallocate some internal line item figures to reflect the updated costs. And I'll probably conclude with the next steps that if the Council resolves today, then the draft operational plan would be included in the Council's consultation package. And then, of course, consultation is done by both the Authority and the Council through separate and independent processes. I think that's quite a positive that both parties do their own consultation. And I think they're just slightly different too in the way those consultations occur. One, of course, the Council's very broad and the Authority's perhaps more targeted as well to make sure that some particular interested parties in the Maunga. And looking forward into the next steps, early next year, the Council and the Authority meet, hold a joint workshop and they consider the feedback. And then following consideration of that feedback, the Council and the Authority must each agree to the operational plan 22-23 for it to become operational. So those are my comments to the report, Madam Chair.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi ki a koe. Thank you for that. Your sound was a bit funny at the end there. I hope everyone was able to hear. I have a question from Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's quite a specific question on the operational plan as it applies to Mount Richmond. Is that okay to ask a couple of specific questions? Of course. Yeah. Yes. Okay, great. So two questions. The first one's, I noticed at Mount Richmond, there's a number of leases coming up, and this might well go to some of the other Maunga as well. In this respect, Northern Sports Club and Otahu Rovers Rugby League. What is happening with those leases that are expiring or have in fact in one case already expired and now the one coming up next year. Are they, as a rule, just being rolled over, or is anything happening that councillors should be aware of in terms of the leases to these community groups and sports clubs?
If you could all hear me, because I can see it's breaking up for a number of us. I would say that the leases are coming before the authority in the future, and so the parties have been in discussions about those leases, and there's an anticipation that the authority will consider them early in 2022.
John, did you hear that?
I just got it. I heard it was breaking up a bit. So
Yeah.
What I heard is they're going to be considered. I didn't really get the answer to my question as what is generally happening with leases. Are they just being rolled over, or are people, is it coming to an end and they're leaving as a rule? And in one instance here, the expiry date was 31st of October, so I assume a decision's already been made there. So I just want to get a sense of what's happening to these leases, particularly when they go to significant, sporting groups like, the Leopards Rugby League.
Dominic, maybe just turn your video off.
Chair.
That might hear. Yeah.
Chair, can
you hear me?
Oh, sorry.
Is that you, Paul?
Can you hear me, Chair? Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Sorry. Over to you, Paul.
I just wonder with Dominic's perception whether I come in.
Thank you for that. Yes.
It's not appropriate for us to talk about the merits of decisions, given those are statutory matters, and we have to follow that process. But what we can say is, as a general approach, in terms of applications being made, the statutory purpose of consistency with the values of the Tūpuna Maunga, the paramount considerations, for the most part, rollover isn't the right word, and I think that was meant in a general sense, because oftentimes these are legacy leases granted under former regimes by the legacy councils, and with our separate statutory regime, different approaches occur. But if we think as a more recent one, for example, on Maunga Mountain, the sports club lease was applied for there and granted. And in terms of the background and length of association with the Tūpuna Maunga, those are very relevant and important matters. And so we have no general approach of saying that activity shouldn't continue. If there is that consistency with the values of the Tūpuna Maunga and support for the work of the restoration of the Maunga, those are important considerations. So I'm being generic and covering the general matters at this time, just because we can't give definitive answers, and appreciate the nature of the questions.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. And Councillor Watson, are you all right with that?
I understand the points that's been made. I guess my question was a generic one in terms of what happens with the leases. It might be more fruitful for me to perhaps try and explore this in a more case-by-case basis to get a better understanding. But I guess just what I'm signalling is that it would be useful to have some sort of feedback at some point as to what that translates into in reality when these leases come up with individual entities. My second question, also going to Mount Richmond, I noticed that in the budget there's a couple of items there in terms of one for investigating sports fields, investigating opportunities and implement suitable facilities for sports programs, 300k, and then the track network, develop the track network in Mount Richmond, roughly 500k over a couple of years there. So I'm curious to know what is it in terms of the sporting infrastructure program that's being identified through that funding, and what does the track network upgrade involve specifically in at Mount Richmond?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Three things. The first is very happy to pick up individual discussions with governing body members to give an update on where matters are at. The second, this is a more general one, just to remind ourselves, these matters have all been approved in the long-term plan, so there's nothing new here. On the specifics, the investigation is with the former bowling club having decided to move, that space has become available, so there's opportunities there. And in terms of the track network, for those familiar with the Tūpuna Maunga network, and a few examples come to mind in terms of what's been happening there to Tātua Rukuita, Three Kings, Maungarai, Mount Wellington, Māngere Mountain. A big program for this term of the Tūpuna Maunga has been the track upgrades because of the impacts of the heavy foot traffic. And again, if you've been up the Tūpuna Maunga during the lockdown, the Tūpuna Maunga have been very important places for the people of Tamaki Makakoto to connect with during those difficult times. And so a lot of damage actually occurred in terms of the fabric of the Tūpuna Maunga. And that's why the track upgrades are so important.
Okay, Councillor.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I've got in the sidebar Councillor Casey happy to second. Councillor Filipaina, are you happy to move? I've put a second chair's recommendation, just noting the financial budget envelope hasn't got any change. And if you're happy with that, would you like to move? Be the mover?
Kapai, thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder, Filipaina Casey. Any other questions? I'll now open for kōrero, for comments. Any comments? Councillor Walker.
So my main comment, Madam Chair, is around the removal of trees as part of the operational plan, particularly the very large number of very mature trees that are a very significant carbon sink across the region that are on the Maunga. And while there may be some merit in the removal of those trees over time, we're in the midst of a climate emergency, and anything that is fixing carbon at this point in time, from my perspective, has got considerable merit, particularly given the very difficult issue around revegetation with small plants and the high death rate. So I have an ongoing concern around the retention of mature trees, irrespective of whether they're native or exotic, noting that as much and all as some of the trees may be exotic, they are actually present and endemic in New Zealand at previous points in New Zealand's past. So I have a real concern around that, and I'd like to vote against the operational plan on that basis, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Filipaina, you have a whakaaro comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And if there's nobody else, is this where I can close it now, Chair, seeking your guidance?
Well, I've got nothing on the sidebar, so I'll give it your famous 3-second rule. Any other comments?
Yes, Madam Chair.
We have a comment from Councillor Bartley. It's okay, Councillor Filipaina, I'll let the other comments go first and I'll put you last. So Councillor Bartley, your whakaaro.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Filipaina, for letting me go now. I just wanted to speak in support of this. I want to commend the Tūpuna Maunga Authority for their work throughout the year and for this operational plan. Definitely agree to recommend this to our governing body later on today, but also pointing out for councillors or for governing body, or for this committee anyway, the educational work that's going to be increased through the Tūpuna Maunga Authority, which is going to be vital for everybody, because it is about educating people around the Maunga, around the background of how the Tūpuna Maunga Authority came to be, around Māori, around mana whenua, around co-governance, around the Maunga being ancestors, not just a place to play sports or to drink and have a good time after your game, or a place where you can have whatever trees or whatever structures you want on there. It is ancestors, Tūpuna. So the more that understand that, the better, and that will help us as a city, I think, to understand what the Tūpuna Maunga Authority is there for and what the Maunga actually are. And that might help influence some of the questions that we are putting forward as well. So, my thanks to the Tūpuna Maunga Authority, especially the education work that's going to be amped up in the operational plan, because it is greatly needed. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Just reminding everybody, this is going out for consultation. It is not a final decision. It is going out for consultation. So now I will hand the next comment or whakaaro to Councillor Hills.
Kia ora, Madam Chair, and just want to thank the Tūpuna Maunga Authority, and just, once again, this is a repeat basically of the plan we've already approved, and I think that might have been unanimously at the time, but the long-term plan for the Maunga and what the Tūpuna Maunga Authority is doing, restoring the mauri of those amazing taonga in our community, and just want to thank them for the work, especially for Mangawika and Takarunga in our area, the tracks, the planting, the artwork, the fact that the first time in decades and decades, the Pākehā historical World War I and II buildings and the tunnels are being restored really amazingly by the authority as well. So not only are they restoring the original mauri of those areas, they're also respecting and building on and appreciating the history as it went on within the last 100 years as well. So I just think that there are more people flocking to our maunga than ever before. The track upgrades on other maunga across Tāmaki are pretty phenomenal. And I'm only hearing positive things, plus the 40-odd thousand trees that are being planted each year to create those urban forests that were there long before we've been here, that are coming back, and we're going to see over the next couple of decades those significant forests on our maunga and bringing back those native forests that would have originally been there. So just want to thank everyone for that, and the fact that we probably don't appreciate this budget of how much work goes into it, and what we're actually approving here benefits not only us but the wildlife and birds as well.
Kia ora, thank you for that. Any other comments? I'll just add an official comment from me before I hand back to Councillor Filipaina, and that is I support this going out for consultation. I support the summary of the draft plan for inclusion in the consultation material. The second chair's comment, as I mentioned before, just by way of clarity, is just noting from a financial perspective there wasn't any increase to the budget envelope requested from the Tūpuna Maunga Authority, and I thank them very much for that. I'll now hand back for closing comments or whakaaro from Councillor Filipaina.
Tēnā koe te hea mana. Thank you so much, Chair, for this. I'm not going to repeat what everybody has said because I know their time is precious. But tēnā koe te rangatire pō ngā mihi ki a koe. Tēnā koe Dominic, and to our whānau, Tūpuna whānau online, ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa. All I will say is that I endorse all the comments around acknowledging our staff, and for those elected members, can you please also bear in mind that there are elected members on the Tūpuna Maunga Authority, so if you do have any questions, just contact us. I want to acknowledge those elected members on the Tūpuna Maunga Authority along with the Chair for the work that has been put through in this term. And thank you so much again, Chair. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. With no further comments and closing the debate, it's been moved and seconded, and I will put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Against for the reasons I gave.
Against,
Abstain, thank you.
against from Councillor Walker and abstention from Councillor Fletcher.
Against the same as Wayne, thank you. Sharon.
Against from Councillor Stewart. So 2 against and 1 abstention. Noted. Thank you. Right, now we move on to kia ora, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dominic and Nick.
Hold on.
Yami.